I think it is only fair that I am transparent. I am not an expert on anything. I simply enjoy life to the fullest, and I enjoy experimenting and being creative. If owning a fountain is your goal, then perhaps Amazon is your source. They do have a lot of very creative and clever fountains for sale. First, let's talk about the errors that I made. The fountain was simply not big enough, so when the birds took a bath, they splashed almost all the water out of the bath. So, I would recommend a bath that is not less than 36 inches across. Okay, let's talk about the components. First of all, you're going to need a solar panel. This is a 10-watt panel, and it was sufficient for this small fountain. Next, you will need a charge controller. Now, this is a very important little piece of equipment, and it is very inexpensive. We will get back to this piece of equipment in just a few minutes. I cannot begin to tell you how much joy you're going to have in not only building this fountain, but in watching the birds from your kitchen or your back porch or wherever. The fact that you built it adds that much more to the joy of having this fountain. The next important component, of course, is a battery. Now, a battery will serve many different purposes, and we'll get into that in a minute. The next important item, of course, is the pump itself. Then you're going to need wires, of course, and you're going to need tubing. Note the dimensions on your tubing. There's an inner dimension and an outer dimension. Both are extremely important. This was the tubing that I used. So, to recap, the four major components other than the tubing and the wires will be your solar panel, your charge controller, battery, and of course the pump. And to promote myself, you may purchase all of these items on my Amazon portal. Of course, they pay me a small commission when you do. All you have to do is to scan the above, and that's it. The other components, of course, is that you're going to need a base to put your fountain. The base is very important, and it should be watertight, because in your base you will store your battery and your charge controller, and of course the wires that leads from both of those items. In my case, I stored the battery, the charge controller, in a small casing that I bought at the dollar store. I then punched little tiny holes so that I could get the wires to the panel and to the pump out of that little casing. Of course, the wires to the battery will stay in the casing with the battery. Okay, let's talk about each component separately. You'll notice that the battery is a 6-volt battery of 4.5 ampere hour. Okay, and this is important. When you divide 10 watts, which is your solar panel, by 6 volts, which is the battery, you'll have 1.6 amps. Incidentally, this little formula is really the basis of all solar projects. It is much more involved than that, of course, but then this is just to build a fountain. If you're going to light your backyard, I would get a professional to do that. Of course, a major difference if you're going to be using 110 LED bulbs is that you would use solar panel, charge controller, and then you would use a power inverter. Now, let's talk about the charge controller. You'll notice that there are 3 components to the charge controller. From left to right, you have the input for your solar panel. In the middle, you have the input for the battery. And then, to the right, you have the output for your load. It is important to note that you must always hook up your battery first, and then your solar panel. Your load then will be whatever project you're working on. In this case, you're working on a fountain and a bird bath. But like I said before, solar projects are always fun. Let's say, for example, you wanted to light up your backyard with those small bright LED bulbs. They take the E-base bulbs. So that's what you wanted to do. So in that case, instead of using a small charge controller, you'd use one that's more powerful. 12 volts, for example. So you'd have a 100-watt solar panel, and then you would use a larger charge controller that can handle 12 volts. Then you would have a 12-volt battery. In theory, you could use a 100-watt solar panel and a 12-volt car battery and light up your backyard, except that the load will go to what is known as a power inverter. Your charge controller, of course, would be more powerful and could handle higher amperage. So let's say a 100-watt solar panel divide by your 12-volt car battery, then what you would be doing is to put out 8.33 amps, which I think would be sufficient to replace the amperage used by your car battery. But that's another video. Let's move on about our fountain. So, in our base, we would have the charge controller and the battery. Then our pump would be right here in the middle. In my case, I simply inverted the terracotta pot, and trust me, it'll not be watertight. Water will seep in to the pump. The top part, which is the bird bath, I wanted to give the illusion of a riverbed, hence the gravel. By the way, notice that the hose is not hanging off the side. It is in fact about a 1/4 inch away. That's because I wanted water to not go over to the side, but also to go into the bird bath. Killing two birds with one stone, so to speak. Now, let's get back to these terracotta pots for a minute. The terracotta pot in the middle does have a hole at the bottom, so the hose goes up from the pump up through the bottom and into the bird bath. Okay then, so to recap, you have a base. In that base should be watertight, waterproof anyway, because there you will have your charge controller and your battery. Then, of course, you will have a terracotta pot that's inverted, and inside that terracotta pot you will have your water pump. The basin on which the terracotta pot sits inverted will be surrounded by gravel, and the gravel will act basically as a filtration system of sorts. Yes, I am aware that I'm repeating myself, but it is important. In your base, you will have your charge controller and your battery, hopefully enclosed in some sort of enclosure. The wires will then go from the charge controller, that is, to the panel and to the battery, and to your load then will be the pump. The pump will be in the terracotta pot that sits on a base, if you will, filled with water, and this water, of course, will go into the pump area, pump it through the hole to the bottom of the terracotta, which is inverted, by the way, and up to the bird bath. You understand? Do keep an eye on the water in the top portion and on the base on which the terracotta sits, because the birds will have a tendency to take a bath frequently, splashing all the water out. That is one of the reasons I mentioned earlier that you want to get a very wide bird bath and base for the terracotta pot in where the pump sits. So, I apologize for not being as eloquent as I should have been. Perhaps I lack in detail. However, I hope you got the essence of what I've talked about and that you will have fun in creating your own bird bath and fountain to match your own style. Thank you very much for watching. Incidentally, should you wish to donate to Microdac, please do. I appreciate every donation that I can get. In the meantime, you may stay here and keep watching these fantastic birds do their thing.